Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the SMWS America channel. I'm Tom Smith, one of the senior directors with the Society here in the U.S. And this evening, I'm hopping on in New York. My special guest is across the way in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we are going to be getting into a cask that we're releasing with the Scotch Malt Whisky Society in America on Tuesday of next week. It's a 0.1, so something that we always get a little more excited about, I think, when it's the inaugural cask of a new distillery. And this distillery is the 163rd that we have worked with since our founding in 1983. And yeah, man, this is a belter. I got this whiskey in front of me. I'm nosing it already. It's really gorgeous stuff. And I'm very, very excited to introduce Isle of Harris Distillery. And with Isle of Harris, the indelible Robin Coupar. Robin, how are you, man? Welcome.
Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Pleasure, man. Thanks for spending a late afternoon with me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Man, that's great.
Excited to talk about the Isle of Harris with you.
Yeah, and want to welcome everyone. You guys are just kind of coming on. It's been a little while since we've had one of these streams. Sean, Whiskey Goodness, Tubin 101, Isle all over this. Very nice. Whiskey and Slushies, welcome. Jason, it was good to see you in New York when Charlie was here. Good to have you here. And Michelle, welcome. Throughout the evening, if you guys have any questions at all, please give a shout here in the chat. And I am not nearly as smooth at this as Ben, so I'll do my best. But yeah, if there are some questions that come up along the way, I'll do my best to point those out to Robin as he kind of guides us through the very unique project that is Isle of Harris Distillery. Before we dive into the island and the distillery itself, Robin, a few words about you. You've been in the industry quite some time. We've known each other for a few years now, and you've been a member of the society for a long time.
Right. So let's deal with the first question. So I started in January '95 in Glasgow, back in Scotland, with United Distillers in production planning. And then I joined Glenmorangie a few years after that. And that took me all across, South America particularly, and then eventually to North America, where I took up, so I went from sales to become a sort of brand advocate, brand ambassador. And then I changed ship with the acquisition of Glenmorangie and Ardbeg by LVMH. So I joined them back into sales, and then I sort of did a backward flip into marketing when I joined what was then known as Sky Spirits, owned by Campari, but they kept the name Sky Spirits. And we had Glenrothes, we had the Morrison Bowmore portfolio, which included Bowmore, Auchentoshan, and Glengarry. We also had the Suntory portfolio, which in those days it included Yamazaki 12 and 18, and later the Hakushu and Hibiki. Wow. But along the way, and now Campari's name was above the door, as it were, they bought Wild Turkey Distillery, and along with Wild Turkey came Russell's Reserve, which was kind of given to me. It was my sort of baby, and coming from a Scottish whisky background, concepts like non-chill filtration were beginning to start to appear in bourbon, and also, releasing limited, batches. But Campari also had a malt whisky distillery called the Glen Grant, and in the latter period of my time at the Campari company, I kind of acted as a sort of brand, sort of subject matter expert consultant, and global brand ambassador. So that all changed last year when I left to take up this opportunity with Isle of Harris, because it's not just the liquid, which we'll start to talk about, I'm sure, but so the whole story behind the distillery, the distillery's mission, where it's located, the importance of its location, that particular island and part of Scottish culture overall. And so I've joined a young upcoming distillery, which now you can actually buy a society bottling from, which is pretty special. And I see this as almost like we've reached some new milestone. When you're young and you're growing, you're kind of reaching milestones, but to become part of a very serious society like yourselves, that's special. Now, to answer the second question, I actually joined the Scotch Malt Whisky Society before I even joined the industry, so it would probably be around about the late 80s, early 90s. And when you joined, you got 2 bottles, and I can't remember for the life of me what they were. And but we used to go to the Queen Street venue, which was not far from where I lived, which was one street down on Albany Street in Edinburgh, if you know that part of Edinburgh. So it was easy for us to go, and it was quite sophisticated, and you're a member of a society and all that. But when I came to America, of course, my US membership sort of kicked in, and we would do quite a lot of events with the Scotch Malt Whisky Society across the United States. And so throughout
whiskey
my
extravaganzas,
career, exactly, Alan and Maddie Shane, some of the members will remember, they may have even joined by attending some of those events. But so I feel like we're coming, looping sort of circles, etc. Coming full circle.
Nice.
That's the word, isn't it?
Well, it's a small whiskey world when you hang out in it for a little while, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you for sharing a little bit about your past and what's yet to come. And so now you've been with Isle of Harris now about a year or so. And
I joined around about August, July, August, and I was following their path for a few years, and so when we sort of made contact, it felt the right time was to join and become part of this incredible brand's development. Obviously the US is an important market for us.
And we've been on a run, a bit of a run at the Scotch Malt Whisky Society in the kind of Western Highlands. We've seen a lot of Ben Nevis come back into the fold after there was quite an absence of that for a long time. Which is a more established distillery, but some of the newer distilleries like 149 Ardnamurchan, 161 Nicknean, which we just released our first bottling. It was a 0.2. We didn't get the 0.1, unfortunately, but that's available on our site right now. Another kind of newer, very quality driven organic distillery there. And now Isle of Harris being the newest distillery, 163. So we're really, really excited to have that be the newest member of the society family and be able to share at least a few bottles with everyone. For those of you watching, we will have 60 bottles available for release, and that'll be happening on Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. It will be limited to 1 bottle per member. I imagine these bottles will last all of about 30 minutes or so. So I'd clear your schedule and make sure, do your best to try and grab one of those. But there will be more casks, both peated and unpeated malt from Isle of Harris. So we're really, really excited get this partnership going, but to have a lot more stock coming down the road. So let's shift to the island. So when most people think of Harris, they may think of the Tweed, but until I guess how many years ago, 10 years ago, that was really what the Isle of Harris was offering to the world at large until the distillery came along. Can you talk about how that came along and the effect it's had and just the unique story that is Isle of Harris Distillery?
Yeah, I mean, I have a map behind me. So, but the Isle of Harris is on the outer west coast. It's known as the Outer Hebrides.
Yeah.
Everyone will know the Isle of Isla, Isle of Skye. That's what we call the Inner Hebrides. So we're further out.
Okay.
And the founder of the distillery was a gentleman called Anderson Bakewell. And he had been coming to the islands for, I think, with his family since the 1960s. And in the latter part of, I think towards the 90s into the early 2000s, the population more than halved. So it went from about 4,000 to under 2,000. And that's when, alarm bells started ringing, because you have a whole question mark on the survival of the island. Is it sustainable for people to live there? Now, this island is a very special place. I mean, it's actually, if you look at in the map, and I'm sorry, the map here is not so great, but it looks like it's one island. It's Lewis and Harris. And there is a small channel of water that separates them, which makes it officially an island, but it's essentially the same piece of rock. But
okay,
the communities would be quite separated because there's very large mountains that separate Lewis and Harris. So unless you were on a boat, there was, I think, very little connection between the Isle of Lewis, which is the larger of the two, and the Isle of Harris. But the two main, I guess, industries would be crofting. In other words, that is very small subsistence farming, where you would probably have a small parcel of land. You would grow vegetables. You may have a couple of sheep. You would probably have a boat to go, fish, but very small. And then the other one would be weaving. And your viewers may have heard of Harris Tweed. Actually, this tablecloth is Harris Tweed. And Harris Tweed is probably one of the finest, highest grade herringbone tweeds you can find. Christian Dior, Burberry, the early Burberry would use a lot of Harris Tweed, I'm told. Ralph Lauren, Vivienne Westwood. So it was kind of, the name Harris Tweed became quite synonymous with luxury, haute couture design. So it's a very high-end fabric, and it's actually made by hand. Okay, and it's by the old sort of bicycle pedal power, where the pedal power of your physical bicycle pedaling
right
power,
yeah, sure,
runs the looms. I don't really know much about it myself. So anyway, you've got this declining population, the lack of jobs, many young people are leaving, and a way of life which has to be sustained and sort of stopped from serious further decline. So the idea was to build a distillery. And by chance at Tarbert, which is the main town on the island, it's possibly half of the population, or maybe even more. The Scottish government had reclaimed some land, but I think whoever they were reclaiming it for, and I don't know the details, but no one had actually built on the land, but it was available, and so they had a place to build a distillery in. And I think the founding 10 members of the team that started are still there, I believe, and they got planning permission. The distillery was built, and it's a very small distillery, of course. I mean, you can see a little bit here. What you'll notice, this tells you a lot. These are little wooden fermenters, and we have two pot stills. So
you're upstairs. So you're upstairs there, right?
Yes.
Those are going down another story to the ground, right?
Yeah, these vats, these are what we call washbacks. These are obviously much deeper. So this is a false floor. So underneath there's lots of piping and tanks, etc. But these vessels are about 8,000 liters. So we fill them with probably about hope this doesn't fall over. About 6,000 liters of wash. But the point is, Tom, it's a very small amount of spirit, and that's really our capacity.
Yeah. So what is your capacity per annum? Are you a few 100,000 liters?
Yeah, I was told when I was there in May by the production team, it's 200,000 liters of liquid. Now that would compare. I mean, your distillery 24, for example, the one up in Speyside.
The M word, yes.
Well, I mean,
they're at about 15 million liters.
We're probably a thousandth of what they produce.
Yeah.
Probably about 1,000th. So that gives you an idea how.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm sitting here nosing this,
and
at least we have one person. Dave is enjoying a wee dram of the Hirach right now.
Go on, Dave.
And what is everybody else enjoying? If you're sipping on something, let us know about it. And I want to get into this.
Can I just say something?
I've been nosing this Hirach. Now, to my untrained American ears, I would look at this and say, Hirach. Is that correct?
I'm just going to say, I wanted to say un gran saludo para mis amigos en Tampa, okay? Hola.
Hola.
I was in Tampa.
All right, cool.
Heroch. And Heroch is the Gallic.
Heroch. All right, I like it.
Heroch. You got to put the in the end.
Yeah, okay, cool. Nice.
So like Ilach, someone from the Isle of Islay is an Ilach. So Heroch is Gaelic, and so that's what we call our whiskey. It means somebody from the Isle of Harris. So, great. Yes.
Well, I like the way they smell.
I tried this last night in a bit of preparation, and my first nose was, it just took me right there to the water side by the
stood there,
Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah. I was this is in the Speyside, but I had the pleasure of being at Glenglassaugh Distillery right across from Sand End. Yeah. Sipping a Sand End whiskey, on the banks of the Atlantic, and it was just the North Sea, and just having all that sea air rushing through your head as you're just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah,
so
they're on the other
I could
side.
only imagine very far away from where you guys are, but it's that sense of place,
definitely
standing there on the island, wherever you may be, and getting to taste that whiskey there is always really
there
special.
Is a provenance. They do have a provenance. The whiskey malt distillers do have a provenance, or a terroir, as the French would call it. I think, in this, so our distillery is on the mainland facing side, so it's facing east.
Okay.
So on a clear day you'll see the Isle of Skye. Okay. You won't see the mainland, but on the other side where the barrels are sitting in warehouses, you're on the Atlantic side. And of course the Atlantic, is carrying a lot of moisture in the air. Think about these Atlantic winds and waves smashing, against the rocks, and that moisture, So you're going to get, definitely, there's going to be a link, a connection in some of the notes that will come straight from the sort of immediate environment.
So this is what we're tasting here. So this is the Hiroch original from the Western Highlands. It's a non-age statement, so it has to be at least 3 years old. Could be older, but can't be any younger than that. And it's a mix of ex-bourbon, ex-Oloroso sherry, and ex-Fino sherry casks. Yeah. There we are. Robin was nice enough to hand off a bottle to me last week when he was in New York. So now I get to enjoy this lovely, lovely nectar for a while. And now yeah, that salinity really comes through for sure.
This is the same one that you have, so it's the same batch.
Okay, nice.
And we can talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll let you talk about the batches if you like. This is diluted to 46% ABV, but it has a really nice palate presence, a nice mouthfeel. It doesn't feel what some society now, Robin, you have to understand, society members are spoiled on cask strength whiskey, and a lot of them consider anything else to be neutered. But I do think that at 46, it shows a little stronger than that, and maybe that's the cask influence coming through, or that a little bit of that salinity, that sea spray, that adds a bit of dimension and a bit of intensity.
That batch does have a little kick of peat smoke on the end.
Now, you mentioned the batch, and you're only doing 200,000 liters a year, and these are done in different batches. And I imagine that you're a young enough distillery that batch to batch there might be some differentiation in the amount of bourbon versus Oloroso versus Fino casks that are being used. So there is some slight difference between these batches. So you don't have consistency all the way through, which I suppose can be a curse and a blessing.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting closer to what we think is more of a consistent product from batch to batch. But I would say that I work for bigger distilleries, and there will have been differences from bottling to bottling, even where they're bottling, they may be batching, 200, 300 casks. Sometimes you'll see it, but the bigger the distillery is, the more stock they have. So the more, barrels they can pick from to keep a consistent product. So we, each batch we produce, and it really it's according to our filling tank size. So when the blending team, Shona and Harry, are satisfied that the liquid they have for the Heroch is as consistent and as precise as it can be, that then becomes the batch that is currently numbered. Okay, so what it will say on the strip stamp on that bottle you have there, Harry, it's HE, and HE is the Heroch, and then there's a few zeros, and then it's 1024. So that batch was batch 10, and the distillery will release 4 batches at a time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Right.
You got it. I think we're on batch 19. I think 17, 18, 19 are in America right now. But at some point in the future, I think the batch number will start to disappear. I'm told that you'll still be able to see and also trace in the future if the customer wants to. There's this is called a rotation number. So it's applied. there's a machine that they put this in front of.
This is the L240213 I read on the back. Yeah.
Yep. And that there's a code there that will tell you, you know, the day, the year, the minute, the hour.
So at some point, will a consumer be able to go on the Isle of Harris Distillery website and plug in that code and get a story about their batch? Is that what you're working towards, or that's not really?
No, I believe so. I believe that's the goal. That's what I was. They told me when I was over there that, you know, nowadays, you know, when the distillery started releasing the Heroch, and we still are, we record the batch number on the strip stamp, but in time, what I'm saying is that batch to batch there'll be much more consistency.
Sure.
So,
well,
like for example, batch 11. So we're trying batch 10. Batch 11 is very dialed up on the sort of softer, you know, fruity notes. So you get a bit of green apple in batch 10 and a bit of the smoke. Batch 11, you tend to get more of the sort of lychee dragon fruit. It's actually surprisingly more sort of Asian fruits for some reason, which is quite you know, so that's the biggest variance I've seen. Batch 12, 13, you know, they're pretty much they're you know, it's an elegant style.
More of the orchard fruit, or so what's the outlier, the kind of lychee Asian influence of batch 11 is the outlier? That's what you're saying?
I would say it's slightly outliers. So
yeah.
You know, if you're doing a lineup of different batches, you'll probably see small, you know, variances from batch to batch. But that was an example, you know, batch because, you know, when we're doing tastings, you know, I did a tasting at, I think it was a local whiskey club, and you know, when they do whiskey tasting, they quite often have 5, 6, 7 different expressions. We've got 2 expressions. We've got the Heroch and we've got the Oloroso. So to you know, broaden that out a little bit, to do a more of a meaningful tasting, I'm probably going to do 2 examples of, you know, 2 or 3 different batches of the Heroch, and that's a great way of telling the audience that, you know, if you're a small distillery and you're putting out batch to batch, there will be some swings in there. But now, I think that also applies to some of the larger, mid-sized, even larger distilleries as well.
Yeah.
So,
now you mentioned a whiff of smoke. Now, how much is there peat in this original and in the Oloroso? Is there peated malt as well?
Yes.
Yes.
So we would be, you know, classified as one of the low peated malt whiskies. So I think we're around about 12, 15 parts per million.
Okay, yeah, so that's pretty light. And is that from a maltster on the mainland, or is there? Okay.
Yes.
Are you able to tell us which maltster you get it from?
I think there's a few. I think there's 2, 3 malt suppliers. You know, there'll be some suppliers in Scotland will only supply certain companies, and then there'll be others that, you know, will supply, you know, some of the independents. So I'm not sure exactly which malt supply. I think Baird's is one of them. I might be wrong, but I think we have more. You have to sort of, you can't rely on one.
Sure.
I think you have to.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, but what I will tell you, though,
trading and such,
yeah, the island is very rocky. The Isle of Harris is actually, we're sitting on the oldest rock on the planet. In fact, it's 3 billion years old. You know, like the Earth was pushed up, and then it was folded over, and that's basically 3 billion years old, where there was a seismic movement that separated the American continent with the Eurasian continent, right? Basically create the Atlantic, and there's traces of the same rock in Nova Scotia. Okay. And it's called Louisian Nice. And but I can't remember what we were saying before. Yeah, what we were saying before that. I went off on a tangent there, I think.
That's okay. No. We were talking about peat.
We were talking about that. Yeah. So physically, you're not really able to grow barley on Harris. It just doesn't have the terrain to grow it commercially.
Yeah.
So we have to.
The maturation process is all done on the island.
Yes, and this is very important, the bottling. So, and that's where we're able to employ. In fact, I think the company has a total of about 50 employees. So we're the largest employer in the island, and if you think about it, per capita to liters produced, we've probably got the highest sort of intensity of labor, because every bottle of our whiskey, but you'll see in the background our gin, we've got quite a popular gin actually. That's bottled by hand. So what one of the great parts of the community of Isle of Harris is that all the bottling's done in house. So there's someone on the filling machine, there's someone applying the cap, there's someone applying the strip stamp, there's somebody opening up the flat packs, putting the divs, there's someone lining up the labels, there's the inkjet machine that it goes through that gives you the ink, the rotation number on the back. It's all done by hand. It's not, as opposed to many of the mainland distilleries, particularly those that are owned by the big giant corporations, will pump the liquid into a tanker. It will go down to the central belt, industrial central belt of Scotland. It will go down a fast, high-speed production line, which is pretty much automated. I mean, there may be an operator on a gantry looking down or looking at this computer screen, troubleshooting. But here, it's conversation in the Gaelic tongue. There's some of them speaking English. We have a couple of weavers at the distillery as well. We have, fishermen, we have potters, it's a very much different type of working environment, I think, to many, whiskey operations.
Sounds amazing. I mean, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And
sorry, may I add, because we're a young distillery and proud of it, we have the youngest distilling team in Scotland. And that proves that we've arrested that decline. But our average age of our distilling team is 26.
Wow. That's awesome. When I was I did a tour with Dave Broom a couple years ago.
Yeah.
When he was promoting his Sense of Place book, and at the time he was talking about Ardnamurchan.
Yeah.
And how a place like Ardnamurchan, similar to Harris, was going through a bit of a decline. But you put a distillery there, and it's like dropping a pebble in a puddle and just watching the waves go out, the ripples go out from there, because you have a distillery, and now you have people who younger professionals, whether they're chemists or what have you, who may have gone away are now staying, and they're raising families. And then you have restaurants that are coming in to feed these people. They're staying. Then you have tourists coming in,
right? And
it's all adding to the economy of this little tiny place that without that distillery, might very well vanish. So
no question.
It's pretty remarkable the impact that something like that can have on a community. It's really quite something.
Yeah, definitely. And I've worked in the past. I've worked for large corporations. They'll buy distilleries. I mean, the Scotch whisky is a very cyclical industry. I mean, it goes through. When I joined just after there was a big downturn in the 80s, and the ups and downs, and you mentioned earlier Glenglassaugh, and I mean, I heard that's one of the distilleries that have been sort of mothballed. recommission, mothballed, recommission. Sometimes distilleries are sold
Getting mothballed again.
Right? Yeah,
Very
no,
soon.
it's sad because
Yeah.
there was a lot of excitement about that particular distillery. But there's when bourbon and tequila start growing, and a lot of big companies they'll pull money out of categories, out of brands, and but plow money into these growing brands, so just to surf that wave. And you see what happens then, so that distillery is not selling as much, and then they look to sort of thin down their portfolio. So distilleries can often be bought and sold, and then there's periods of insecurity. That would be devastating. That a distillery like Ardnamurchan or Harris or Isle of Arran, for example, they were bought over by a big company, and then in a few years' time, they shut it down, and that decision would probably be made in London or Paris or or New York City. I don't know, but that's been the kind of that's a common sort of story in the history of Scotch whiskey.
For sure. Oh yeah, a bit too common, unfortunately. But listen, we're now almost 40 minutes into the stream. We haven't gotten to the society whiskey yet. So let's I mean, this is an amazing chat. I really appreciate your time. But I do want to, at least start nosing this gorgeous, gorgeous whiskey. Now, ladies and gentlemen, to make sure that I only took one and only one bottle out of our inventory, so there are 59 bottles for all of you lovely members to enjoy. That bottle sitting behind Robin was the one I brought to him when he was in New York, and so I don't even have it. Robin, could you hold that up, please, and show everyone what we're working with here?
Yep.
This is cask number 163.1, Smokin, for all you circa 90s Jim Carrey fans out there. 6 years old, in our lightly peated flavor profile. I think 58.1% ABV, out of the Western Highlands. So 100% first fill ex bourbon, single cask whiskey, 6 years old. That's a bit older, wouldn't you say, for the stocks that you guys are releasing? Now this is the Hirach. All right, that's the original. Now look at this society. Put it up in front of my blood pressured face here. I don't know if you can tell a bit of a difference in color. I mean, I can see. I'm sure you can see. I don't know how much that translates to the folks at home, but a couple of shades darker on the society bottling.
Yeah,
deeper, like a kind of a deeper.
Yeah, the Heroch is. So I'd say, we don't put a statement of age, so we're not tied to picking stocks above a particular year. But I believe the youngest liquid is possibly 5, maybe 6 years old, and then what we do is we marry the casks and barrels in exhausted sherry butts for a marrying period of harmonization.
Okay.
So
that fairly like inactive wood, essentially.
Yes, but it's like a tea bag, Even you use the tea bag several times over, there's still a little bit of coming out, especially sherry, because sherry's used because it has such a big surface area, but it does a great job of harmonizing. So what we're doing is we're selecting mainly ex-bourbon barrels, and being a young distillery, it's first fill. It's all first fill, and of course, first fill. Going back to that, the tea bag. I drink English tea, right? I buy it, the Tetleys or whatever it is.
Tetleys, huh? Come on, man.
Tetleys or whatever. PG
tips. Come on, you got to go PG tips, baby.
Well, PG.
And you got to take it out. You got to take it out with your fingers. just go grab it right out of there like a
Well, the
man.
PGs are little triangles, and then the Tetleys are the round ones. I've got both, actually.
Well, that's touche. That's
Well, anyway, so
well played. A tea bag for every occasion.
well, being a thrifty Scotsman,
Okay.
I will use my tea bags probably about 3 times, right?
Oh my goodness gracious.
And that's probably the average of using a whiskey barrel in Scotland.
Yeah.
Okay. The first fill, like the first steep of the tea bag, is going to give you more color, more intensity, more flavor. Okay.
Yeah.
The second tea bag will give you a good cup of tea. The third, quite a weaker cup. There's a bit of a drop off there. So, well, when you're using first fill wood, you're getting that sort of first steeping the tea bag effect. You're going to get much more intense flavors. So, I mean, most distilleries, core offering would probably be a lot of refill. So we're getting a benefit from that. And, we're using bourbon. We're sourcing from, it was 2, I think it's now 3 distilleries. So Buffalo, Heaven, and Woodford. Although I think this one we're tasting now is Buffalo and Heaven Hill. And then we are using
the Society cask.
No, I'm talking about
the original. The
original. Your Society cask, I believe, is first fill bourbon only.
Yeah. We don't usually get the provenance of the bourbon barrel. We don't.
Yeah.
We don't receive that information. I mean, I would imagine very few people care. It's what's more interesting is the fact that it's first fill.
Exactly.
more highly active. Just real quick, I want to turn over to the comments.
Yeah.
So Michelle, my problem: what to do with all my empty Isle of Harris gin bottles? They are too beautiful to dispose of. Robin, I believe you have a solution.
That is a very good question. Okay. So, what's the lady's name again?
Michelle Reynolds. Michelle and Dave are clearly super fans. They've been there at least once, if not several times.
Oh, God bless you. God bless you.
Yeah.
And we appreciate that.
And Dave here. It's great to see all the young people working for the distillery. It really has provided career opportunities that will allow kids to remain on the island rather than go off to mainland Scotland. Yeah. And that's the whole point, isn't it? To create this community and opportunity. And then, of course, all of us have to go there. Michelle says, Tom, go to the distillery. You'll love it. I do plan on it, Michelle. I don't know when I will get there, but all of us, I think, should make the pilgrimage to Isle of Harris for sure.
Well, Michelle asked about the empty bottle, and just quickly add that when you finish the contents, this becomes a fantastic refrigerator water bottle.
Yeah.
Or a little lampshade, a little nook somewhere, a nook in your house, little room that you can make into your whiskey bothy, perhaps. You can buy the little lampshade and these little glow bulbs. A guy called BJ Reed, who you may know, he may be a member, he sent me a photo. There was a restaurant up in Napa somewhere. They're using these as their water water bottles. So there you go, Michelle.
Nice. Cool.
They're very pretty. We give them away as gifts as well. I mean, they have a value beyond just the liquid in the bottle. So beautifully designed, actually, because it's a nod to the waters. We're an island, you see. Beautiful, when the tide's out, you get these incredibly long, they're called sea lochs. Okay, so very long white sandy beaches, and then you get this incredible colors. And of course, it's these waters where we harvest the sugar kelp, which is one of the botanicals in the gin. So
nice.
Harris, they little specks of the kelp all around the label there, and kelp is basically seaweed. So,
all right. So just a few other comments here to weave a bit of a narrative. Jeff says a single cask will be completely different from their regular release. So just a gentle reminder to those of you who might be huge fans of the Hirach or the Hirach Oloroso. Our single cask is ex-bourbon and a single cask, not a batched blend. So it will be a bit different. And Whiskey Goodness says, wow, great price too. I hope you guys have been noticing that we've been sharpening our pencils quite a bit on our pricing. And yeah, a year ago, this may have come out at $175 or so, but very, very happy to provide that for you guys. And then Be More, not seeing it listed on the site. It's dropping Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, Tuesday at 1 p.m. Unless, of course, you happen to be in or around the Los Angeles area. Robin, excuse me, will be going down to the Tam O'Shanter, Los Angeles's Society Partner Bar, tomorrow, starting at 7 p.m. for a tasting of Cask 163.1, along with the two other expressions of the Hirach, the original and Oloroso. And we're throwing in a couple of other society bottlings from Ardent American and McNean as well to round out a pretty badass West Coast whiskey tasting. So those of you who show up, there you go, man. Yeah.
West Coasters.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm actually from the East Coast.
That's okay. That's all right. I'm from the East Coast too, but hey, tonight we're all West Coast.
That's from the West Coast.
Right? We're all Hirachs tonight. But those of you who are at the event tomorrow evening will have an opportunity to pre-order your bottle. So if you're able to get there, there are still a few tickets left, not many, but a few seats left for that tasting tomorrow. So anyway, let's get right into this here, because I've been nosing this and nosing it. I have yet to taste this whiskey. It's been sitting in front of me for now of over an hour. So the nose is just freaking beautiful.
Yeah,
I'm getting, you mentioned orchard fruits earlier about the batch 10. I'm getting those orchard fruits, but in a beautiful, like kind of smoky butter, like just lovely textures, like green, those green apples coming back. Lots and lots of fruit to pick apart. What are you picking up there? Someone who's very intimate with this liquid.
I always loved reading the tasting notes and your bottlings, because they're very eye-catching and quite tongue-in-cheek. And when I got to the P.T. Battenberg,
this is really good, man.
This is real. I got to the bit where it says P.T. Battenberg cake on the label.
Yeah, sure.
Gravlax sauce and beach smoked trout are followed by smoked brisket pastrami. That'll appeal to some of your East Coaster friends. Diluted, it's Jamaican style coffee, walnut cake, and smoked Battenberg. And I thought,
sure,
wow, that's pretty amazing. I mean, but I'll tell you and I'll circle back to these notes in a second, right? So I put a little bit in the glass. I thought I want to do a little bit of homework on this last night. My first impression. And if you can remember back, you remember back to the very first nose of a whiskey, what hit me was the Atlantic Ocean. That was the very first impression on me. It was, wow, it's the Atlantic. And then rolls in the sort of peat. And, and then, after a while I thought, it is a bit like peated Battenberg cake. It has a nice maltiness, Harris, which I always think if any good whiskey, it has to have a nice sort of that nice barley sugar.
And it's a really like a clean earthiness, bit of that. One of my favorite terms I always bring up, petrichor, or even more in line with a bit of a fresh potting soil on the nose, like really, just lovely, fresh, moist, fertile dirt Oh, it's delicious.
But
Man,
I mean,
I love it.
there's a bit of nuttiness, and the walnut would be, which is on the. I've never tried Jamaican coffee.
I get that, like a raw walnut. Yeah. Okay. Very
Yeah.
faint. Yeah.
To talk a little bit about the barrel regimen or the formula. So it's mainly bourbon, but then there's a bit of Oloroso, and then intriguingly, there's about 4% of this is Fino sherry. And you don't get a lot of Fino in Scotch whiskey. It's pretty much Oloroso across the board. But Fino gives you just a little bit of. There's a little bit.
That's not in our cask. That's
no. This is in the.
the original, the Hero.
This is the Hero. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But this is only bourbon.
Okay. May I read the tasting panel note on smoking? Yeah. So this is you read the abbreviated bottle note. So here's the full tasting panel note. Descriptors for the aroma came fast and furious. Gravlax sauce, beach smoked trout, black peppercorn infused rye whiskey, and homemade sweet ploughman's pickle. The taste was like smoked brisket pastrami prepared in a brine of pink curing salt, sugar, and spices, alongside mild goat's cheese on Jamaican gingerbread. Intrigued? You should be. And what a change after the addition of water, which we have yet to do. Initially, we stayed in the Caribbean with a warm Jamaican-style coffee and walnut cake, followed by the sweet scent of cherrywood smoked marshmallows. On the palate, we now found a mixture between a smoked Battenberg cake and tiramisu with smoked cocoa powder. Dang. I'm going to add a little bit of water. This is 58.1%.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is really smooth with no water whatsoever. It's the nose is not hot at all.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, listen, the quality of the spirit is top.
I probably wouldn't. I wouldn't add it if I were just sipping with you at home. If we were just hanging out, having a chat, talking tea. I probably wouldn't add any water, but I'm going to add a bit here for the sake of the exercise.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Actually, a lot of nuance comes out there. Especially on the nose. Some really nice kind of ripe fruits, but also almost like a taffy, like.
Yeah, there's a bit of a candy.
Saltwater taffy candy coming through.
Yes.
That's really lovely.
And those little greased, the taffies and those little greased.
Yes.
Wrap, yes.
Oh.
And sometimes they have little lines cut.
The texture
white
is
and red
beautiful,
lines
man.
Running through them, yes.
Damn. I wish I took 4 ounces instead of 2 from that bottle.
But it's got a real salinity to it. You know very quickly that it's an island whiskey. That this, doesn't have the grassiness that a Speyside would have. That floral note that many of the that Speyside is the sort of God's country, of whiskey production.
Yeah.
But this has that. It's almost like a little bit. There's a refinement. It's elegant. It's refined.
There's that salinity, a minerality to it.
Yeah.
It's very clean, but certainly the sea spray is there.
Yes.
It's almost like to me. Forgive me if I'm stepping out of bounds here, but it's like a more muscular take on like a Pulteney, like an old Pulteney style. Old Pulteney is very, very salty, and you have that saltiness here, but there's so much fruit richness behind it.
Have you tasted
that malt richness? Yes, I've already. I tasted it neat. I added water. I mean, I am loving this whiskey. I'm absolutely loving it. That's really gorgeous stuff. And it took, I put in quite a good hit of water. It took the water quite a bit. I'm actually going to add a bit more whiskey here because I'm not driving.
There's a little pepperiness on
Yeah.
the palate.
Yeah. Really nice spice.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, I hope you get a bottle of this.
And this
really,
cask is
really nice whiskey.
This is 60 bottles of the cask.
60 bottles for the United States. So the overall outturn, I think, was somewhere in the neighborhood of 240, and that was split up amongst several countries around the globe. So the more members we recruit, everybody, the more bottles we get. So go out there.
Tasting that peated
grab a friend.
I can get the ginger. You talk about the Jamaican ginger.
Oh, the Jamaican gingerbread. Yes. Yeah.
And a little bit of a pepperiness.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, that's really beautiful whiskey.
Going back, and here's a little interesting story about the kind of the terroir, which we call the provenance in
yeah, let's not say terroir. I have issues. Yeah. I have issues with the term.
But going back to that rock, so most of Scotland is sort of porous rock, where you'd have layers of sandstone and limestone and some granite, and participation means that water will start to filtrate through the rock. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, if it's porous rock like sandstone, limestone, there's going to be a lot of minerals that are absorbed into the water,
making it a bit harder. Yeah, hard water.
Right. So carbonates, magnesium, calcium, etc. So that water will bubble up into a spring that will then because the distillers would they found a spring they could make whiskey, and so most whiskey in Scotland is made from this quite hard water, right? But the rock so the Louisian gneiss, that's spelled with a G, and amorphosite, is very dense. It's 3 billion years old. So the water that we use at Harris is this. We think it's the softest water in the Scottish whiskey industry, because it is very low in mineral content. It's the total opposite, actually, of most of the water. So it sits on rocky basins, and it flows down to the distillery, and it's very soft, and it's actually quite sweet, the water. I mean, I went up there, and it's very safe to sort of scoop up water that comes out of a spring because it's very clean. Mm-hmm. But equally so, this water is very clean as well. So I was lapping it up, and it was nice and soft and smooth and sweet, and that's the water that we use in our mash.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, but whether the water that you're using to charge your mash is very soft and sweet or hard and mineralic, I mean, does that survive? Does that minerality or lack thereof even survive the distillation process?
Yeah, I mean,
does it bear itself out in the resultant liquid?
If Dr. Bill Lumsden was here, he would come up with a very strong sort of answer. We talk about water is one of the 3 ingredients. So it's absolutely vital. And I think yes, there is a difference. I mean, I'm not a chemist. I'm not a gemologist, but I think there is a benefit to using water that has a lower mineral content. There's obvious things like corrosion and stuff like that, and minerals over time getting in the way of production. I'm not one of the whiskey makers, but I think it's also maybe mouthfeel perhaps as well. I mean, I'll stop right there before I start making stuff up, but
Well, the
You know,
mouthfeel on this is incredible on both of these whiskeys, but I mean, I have to say, like, there's just something special about a single cask of cask strength whiskey, no matter where it's from. But this is clearly a very, very special place.
yeah,
So we're really excited to start working with the distillery, and I look forward to what my colleagues in the UK have for us next from Distillery 163. Once again, everyone, if you find yourselves in the Los Angeles area, there are still tickets available. 7 p.m. tomorrow at Tam O'Shanter, where Robin will be presenting his whiskeys along with our single cask and a few others from the society, with our local member ambassadors John and Martin there. And then this will go live on Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern time, as part of our April main outturn, where you'll be able to hopefully secure a bottle for yourselves. Robin, thank you so much for your time.
You can buy one of ours.
Well, that's right. Yeah. And if you can't, then you certainly, even if you can, go out and support Isle of Harris in your local bottle shop. If they don't carry it, tell them they need to, and spread the good word. So, Robin, thank you so much for your time. It was great to see you as always, and I hope we can have you back, and we could be tasting our next single cask expression. Hopefully, hopefully a U.S. exclusive. So there's more love to spread around.
No, I mean, I think, look, you know, we feel like becoming part of the society and having a bottling it. Like I said, it's a big deal for a small distillery to be in the same realm as many of these great distilleries. And
well,
you know,
we are regardless of the size of the distillery or whatever the provenance, we're looking for quality, and the quality is here in spades. So thank you so much for sharing this with us. Everyone who's tuned in, thank you so much for joining us. And with that, I will part by saying, may your drams be many and your headaches be few. Cheers, everyone.